Good morning. This is Mr. Brown in A-Flight, back with another in my long series of instructional videos for RIQ students. Today, I'd like to talk about Matl. Some people say Matl is the way that you handle an emergency procedure. And that's true, but I take slight offense to that. The reason I take offense because Matl is much more than how to handle an EP. It's how we fly our airplanes. If we were to graph this first graph on top, if we were to graph time versus our mission objective, oftentimes students think that this is a linear graph. As time goes by, I do those things that I planned on doing, and eventually I get to the end, I'm done, I land, I've completed my mission. That's not reality. The second graph is more reality. I start off and I'm accomplishing things towards my mission goals, and then things happen. And maybe it sets me back a little bit before I can continue on. This is what reality is, and this is what flying an airplane is. There is no such thing as a perfect sortie ever, even for us experienced pilots. Little things come up. It could be air traffic control gives us traffic and puts us on a vector around the traffic, and now we're not headed towards the point that we thought. Now I'm going to reach that point, say my holding fix, coming in from a different direction than I planned. Maybe San Antonio gives me a low area instead of a high area. There's weather that I have to deviate around. Weather at my destination is different than I thought. All of these things happen to us while we're flying, and we have to deal with that. And that's really where Matl comes in. Everything we do is either Matl or it's ETCA. So let me explain. ETCA, right? That is the control and performance. I establish my pitch and power, I trim my aircraft, I cross-check my performance instruments, and I adjust my control instruments as needed to get the performance that I'm looking for. That is how we maintain aircraft control, which is part of the Matl. So, if I am flying along and I get a call from ATC that there's traffic, I need to turn right 20 degrees. How do I do that? I do Matl. I maintain aircraft control. What pitch and power setting am I going to maintain here while I do this? Then I'm going to analyze that situation. I have traffic. It's out there at 11 to 12 o'clock, so he's turning me to the right to avoid it. I probably will still take a look inside and say, all right, do I have anything in my eyebrow panel? What about my CWS panel? How's my engine looking? What are my other indications? My attitude indicator, my HSI in particular, because if I'm going to turn 20 degrees right, I have to know the heading that I'm currently on. So I analyze my situation there, and then I take appropriate action. I turn. I establish bank, 20 degrees of bank, because it's 20 degrees of turn. That means I have to increase my pitch slightly to maintain level flight. I have to add a little bit of power because I've induced drag by increasing my pitch. I make the turn. I roll out when I get to that heading, and I've taken appropriate action. Land as soon as conditions permit? Well, in this case, that would be at the end of my sortie. So Matl is more than just how do I handle an EP. It is in everything that we do anytime we are presented with new information that's going to affect our flight. Read into that situational awareness and task management as well. Today, though, let's specifically talk about how I would use this to handle a stand-up EP. So whether this is a stand-up EP that the USM gives in the morning brief, or as a tabletop with your instructor before or after your sortie, or it is in the aircraft, in the simulator, and I'm presented with an emergency situation. First thing we want to do is gather all necessary information to handle the problem. So I know I'm having an emergency because my flight commander says, hey, it's time for the EP, and the USUM gets up in front of us. So I kind of know I have an EP here. He's going to present us with some information. Usually he will only give us basic information, and it may be in the form of a slide that shows what's going on and addresses some of these setup items, or it may just simply be a verbal, here's where you are, here's what you're doing, and so you have the aircraft. First thing, when we're presented with the information, we want to take a blank sheet of paper, no additional forms or notes or anything, just a normal blank sheet of paper about the size of your lineup card. And you're going to write down that information that you're presented at first. Everybody should write that down, and everybody should be prepared for the emergency. You will then call on somebody. You'll stand up, pick up your ETD, and come to the foot of the table, set everything down, face the USUM, and if you have any questions, now's the time to ask them. Now, if you notice I said, bring your ETD. If you walk up to the table without your ETD, that is an immediate sit down. That would be the same thing as going to fly without your checklist. Okay, as professional aviators, we don't do that. All right, we make sure we have all of our publications. So bring your ETD. Here are some things to ask. We call them setup questions, which they are, but it just so happens that the word setup is an acronym and it stands for different things. S, what is the status of flying operations? Is the hangovers pattern, is it unrestricted? Is the pattern closed? Is there an alternate? Is it a restricted pattern? If you don't understand the differences in those and what it implies, you need to get into your in-flight guide in the yellow section, traffic pattern operations, and read up on that. So make sure you know what the status of the pattern is. E, environment. What is the environment? Anything that deals with my environment. The cloud ceiling, the tops of the clouds, the winds. Is there icing? Is there clearing line? What are the, I already said winds. Anything that has to do with the environment. Make sure you understand what that is. What is my takeoff and landing data, or my told? That might be necessary. You might need that information in the EP because we don't know yet what that EP is. So make sure you know what your told is. The U, you have to work with me on this one. The U is the U in the word fuel. Okay, how much fuel do you have? How many pounds? And what is the balance? Again, that might affect what is going on. So make sure you know what that is. P is position. Where are you specifically? What altitude, what area, what radial and DME, heading, what are you doing, what's your airspeed, anything that could deal with the position of your aircraft and what you're doing. Make sure you know that. Now, these are things that if we were flying and had an EP, we would inherently know because we've been flying, we've been tracking our position, we should know what's going on around us. But during a tabletop or stand-up EP, we're just suddenly thrown into the information. So we're going to take a few minutes before we start the EP to gather all of the information that we normally would have if we were airborne when this happened. Once we have all of those questions answered, then we're going to come to attention, face the USUM and say, I have the aircraft. I will maintain aircraft control, analyze the situation, take appropriate action, and land as soon as conditions permit. So let's go through each of those letters. M, maintain aircraft control. What we mean by that is, again, ETCA. What pitch and power settings are you going to set to maintain what you're doing? Probably 90% of the time, maintaining aircraft control is going to be continue to do what you're doing. We can't react yet and do stuff until we have analyzed and know what we have. So make sure that you're flying the aircraft first. Sometimes the other 10%, right? I might be, say, doing a nose high recovery when things, lights come on, horns start going off. Well, I don't want to continue doing that, all right? I want to get back to straight and level flight before I start looking and analyzing and taking action. So if that's what you're doing, then part of maintaining aircraft control would be to say, hey, I'm going to knock it off, and then describe how you're going to do that knock it off. Basically, some sort of a recovery, nose high, nose low recovery, roll out, wings level. What pitch and power setting are you going to set once you have gotten back to level flight? Then analyze the situation. When we analyze the situation, we're always going to start with what we call the eyebrow pen. Okay, so we're going to take a look at that. Do I have any lights? What are those lights? Is it a red master warning, an amber master caution? Is it a fire light? Are there no lights? Once I've looked at the eyebrow panel, I'm going to look down at my CWS panel. Now, understand how the CWS panel works. If I have a red master warning, it means I have a red light down on my CWS panel, unless it's the red fire light up above. If I have an amber master caution, I'm going to have some amber lights on my CWS panel. If I have both, then I'm going to have red and amber on my CWS panel. And of course, if I'm airborne, I should have my anti-ice light on. So once I take a look at the CWS panel, I'm not just going to say, what do I see? We want to see some ops limits knowledge. So when you look down there, tell us what you expect to see. All right, I have a red master warning. When I take a look at my CWS panel, I expect to see a red light as well as my green anti-ice light. What do I see? And then we will tell you what you see. Once I've done that, I always want to do a fever check. I want to check the status of my engine, especially in this airplane. We have one engine. So that's what's keeping me airborne. That is what is buying me time to deal with things. And quite a bit of the time, that can be the source of my emergency. So we're always the third thing, eyebrow panel, CWS, engine. We're going to check the status of the engine. That's what the fever check does. So F, fuel flow. Now, as we ask our questions, again, we want to demonstrate knowledge of ops limits. So we're not just going to say, what is my fuel flow? We're going to state what we expect and if there are any limits to that. For example, I'll say, all right, I'm going to do a fever check. I take a look at my fuel flow. Really, the only limit we have on that is, are there fluctuations greater than 10 pounds per hour? Now, if you want to phrase that as, I'm looking for fluctuations less than, that would actually be better. You're stating what you expect to see. And then ask, is that what I have? Excessive ITT. Tell us exactly what you would expect to see. Hey, I look at my ITT. It should be between this and that. What do I see? And we'll tell you what you see. Visual indications. All right, I'm going to take a look, however you wish to do this. Here's one technique. I'm going to take a look out at my left wingtip, and I'm going to start looking for damage, leaks. Is there any smoke, any flames, any ice? Do I see anything? And then I'm going to talk about how from there, I'm going to sweep across from left to right. I take a look at the nose of my aircraft. Do I see any of these things? I should not be able to see my prop while it is spinning. Okay? It should be spinning so fast that I'm looking right through it and can't really see it. If I can start to see that there is something there spinning, that means it's slowing down. that would be a problem. That would be something to look for. And then I'll continue on over to my right wing and look for the same things on my right wing that I looked at my left wing. Now, along with visual indications, I'm going to take a look inside for any visual indications. Do I have any blank displays? Are my circuit breakers in? Do I smell anything? Okay. Erratic engine operation. Do not ask, do I have an erratic engine operation? We're not going to tell you. There is no erratic engine operation light in the airplane. That is something that you have to decide for yourself. So the way we're going to determine that is we're going to go through each gauge. So we take our little cockpit layout diagram, and let's go through every single engine gauge, identify what gauge you're looking at, identify the ops limits for that, for the state of condition of flight, phase of flight that you're in, and ask what you see. Hey, I take a look at my oil pressure. It should be between 90 and 120. What do I see? I take a look at my hydraulic pressure. It should be 3,000 plus or minus 120. What do I see? And you're going to go through every single engine instrument. Now, don't forget to check the voltage and amperage, okay? Take a look at my volts. I should see 28.5. My amps should be positive. What do I see? That is an indication of my electrical system. And that's really the only indication I have of the health of my electrical system. Once you've gone through all of those gauges, R, roughness. In particular, roughness of the engine. Do I hear any unusual sounds? Do I feel any vibrations in the aircraft? Once you have all of that information, it will be up to you to decide if you have erratic engine operation or not. When you are through with that, you should be able to reach an analysis. It's kind of like going to the doctor. When you go to see him, he doesn't immediately say, oh my gosh, you have this problem. He's going to go through his analysis, take your temperature, make you stick your tongue out, look down your throat, look up your nose, tap your knees, push on things that you say hurt. He's gathering the information. And that's what we're doing with this fever check and our analysis. Once we're done, we should be able to say, I analyze this as, and then state what it is. Now, that's not always as simple as you may think. If I lose an engine on takeoff, I see my engine is rolling back, torque is going to zero, everything else is dropping to zero. I can start to see my prop, I'm getting my goof lights to come on. I do not analyze this as engine failure on takeoff, sufficient runway remaining. I haven't gone far enough in this analysis to know if I have sufficient runway remaining or not. I simply analyze this as engine failure on takeoff. Okay? So be careful on how you analyze things. Then take appropriate action. Now, if it includes boldface, again, stand at attention, state the name of the boldface, and then state the boldface. With boldface, though, no omissions, no extra words, no stuttering, no stammering, no okay? So state the name of the boldface, maybe pause for a moment, think about what you're going to say, take a deep breath, and then recite the boldface. Once you're done reciting the boldface, tell us how you're going to execute that boldface. Be specific. For example, with my left hand, I would push down on the PCL cutoff finger lift guard, pull up on the PCL cutoff finger lift, pull up on the PCL, and move the PCL to the cutoff position. Okay, be very specific, describing how you're going to do the boldface. Once you've taken care of the boldface, then get into your checklist, or as we call it, the unit developed checklist, or the UDC. Go to the checklist for the problem you have and run through there, what we call cleanup items. Okay, did I get everything? Remember to take a look at the notes, cautions, and warnings. As you read across, the minute you see that there's a note, caution, or warning, stop, swipe right, read out loud, what that note, caution, or warning is. Once you've done that, state whether it is not applicable or that it is noted. Okay, you're going to do something with that. And then go through the entire checklist. Keep in mind that in our UDC, we have extra links on the left side, things that you might want to reference. So consider whether you want to get in and take a look at those. Things that might later develop. If I have a bus tie light, I'm running my checklist for bus tie light, there is a link to battery bus failure. So that would be something that I would want to reference ahead of time so that if I do lose my battery bus, I'm prepared. I've already looked at things. So talk to us about how you're going to do that stuff. Don't forget, when you're done with the unit developed checklist, next thing to consider would be the in-flight guide, especially in instruments, especially if this is an electrical problem. The in-flight guide pink pages tell us for many different electrical problems how to recover the aircraft and some good tips and techniques for conserving power to the aircraft. So think about talking if there's anything in the in-flight guide that would help. Do your normal checks. We still have to fence in, fence out, get descent checks, do ops checks, things of that sort, okay? Make sure you run those normal checks. Formulate your plan. Once you have a plan, which includes all the way to what type of an approach to the runway and what you're going to do with the plane after you get on the runway, after you get on the ground. Once you have that plan complete, then you would call the SOF and let him know what your problem is. Tell him what checks you've run, tell him what your plan is, all the way to engine shutdown and egressing the aircraft. The SOF is not a freebie of, hey, I don't know what to do, SOF, tell me. If that's the case, we should never have gotten in the airplane to take off, right? We're the pilot in command. We need to make those decisions. The SOF is simply someone there that can back us up and say, yes, it sounds like you got everything. Oh, wait a minute. Did you check this? Did you check that? He's also a good resource to get an update on pattern status, get an update on weather, and some other information of that sort. So make sure that you talk to the SOF. And then finally, land as soon as conditions permit. For that part, take us through in detail how you're going to recover the aircraft, the checks you're going to run, the pitch, the power, the headings, the procedures you're using. Don't make the USM or your instructor have to interrupt you and pull information. What are you doing with the airplane? What are you setting here? Okay. Take it very slow, very chronological, and include all of your actions, just like your chair flying. If your USM or your instructor wants to speed things up, he will speed things up, right? You go nice and slow, right? Talk us all the way through the landing, configuring the airplane, landing, the radio calls, what you're doing with that airplane now once it's on the ground. Again, be specific with what you're doing. Keep talking until your IP says it's over. For the morning stand-up, when he finally says it's over, remain standing at the table. Don't go sit down. You're still on the hot seat for the debrief. If you're not the one called for the EP, you need to make sure that you continue to take notes. You listen to what your classmate is doing and talking about. Keep notes of what he has done. Keep notes of things that you would do differently, or if you think he did something wrong. You could get called on to take over the EP. You could get called on to be the SOF. So you kind of need to know what is going on and pay attention. It's not over till it's over, so don't sit back and relax and think, oh, great, Bob got it, not me. All right, so be ready to jump in at any time. In a nutshell, that is how to do Matl for a EP. But as I said at the beginning, Matl is more than just EPs. It's how we fly the airplane. It doesn't have to be an EP. simply a change to what we're doing. We still need to maintain control. We need to analyze what we've been told or what needs to be done, the change from a high area to a low area, and then take those appropriate actions. Hope this helps. If you have any questions, talk to you in EIP or come see me. I am Mr. Brown down in A-Flight.